So in this episode, Michael Burnham explains that sometime around the 2900s, dilithium supplies dried up, and then that's when the burn happened that caused a lot of the remaining dilithium to become inert. Since dilithium is used to contain the antimatter that fuels starships, it couldn't contain it anymore and the ships depending on it exploded. This caused most of the Federation to fall apart. During the year that Michael spent looking for the discovery, she worked as a courier. She sent a transmission to Terralisium, but they had never heard of Michael's mom, so who knows where she is. She explains to Saru that Book is not human despite having a very human-sounding name, which Book refuses to explain. Michael shares a transmission that she received from a Trill Federation admiral named Senatal looking for other members of the Federation. They plan to go to Earth, but to avoid having to explain the spore drive, they intend to jump to just outside of Earth's scanning range and pretend to be a ship that has been traveling at sublight speed for years, which is just now arriving. Saru offers to make Michael captain, but she insists that Saru take the position. Tilly tells Michael that she's still dealing with the fact that they're so far in the future that everyone they know is dead, and hoping that there's something left on Earth that they still recognize. She also notices that Michael seems different, in a good way. Giorgio beams Book onto the ship, and Book recognizes her from her attitude and the description Burnham probably gave him. She beamed him aboard to sort of size him up, given that Burnham has spent a whole year with him. Burnham gives him some dilithium as payment, and he is impressed by how much they have. Michael asks Book to come with them to Earth to help hide the dilithium on his ship because he has a cloaking device. Saru doesn't like the idea of trusting Book with their dilithium supply. They jump to the solar system and arrive near Saturn, then a few moments later they are looking out the window at Earth, which doesn't really make sense if they weren't traveling at warp. A force field is suddenly projected around Earth and some ships approach them. Captain Ndoye from the United Earth Defense Force tells them that they broke the law by getting that close to Earth without permission. Saru explains that they are a generational ship and that they are the descendants of the original crew. Captain Ndoye doesn't buy that they are who they say they are, given how old their ship is. Saru explains that they survived the burn because their ship was not at warp at the time of it. Because Ndoye is still suspicious, a bunch of the defense forces beam aboard the ship to search it. To disguise Book, Michael gives him a Starfleet uniform, and Giorgio puts on an Admiral uniform. Giorgio picks up on the fact that the year of freedom from Starfleet protocol has grown comfortable for Michael, and she's not totally comfortable with coming back on board. Captain Ndoye explains that after the burn, Earth had to become self-sufficient and has such strict security because of dilithium raiders, especially a guy named Wen. She also explains that the Federation and Starfleet haven't been on Earth for 100 years. She doesn't know where the headquarters went. She also doesn't know where Admiral Tall went. Stamets tells one of the Defense Force officers to stop snooping around, and they ask what the purpose of the spore cube is. Stamets says it's for experiments. Their name is Adira, and their boss tells them that they're finished with the inspections when there's a red alert. A bunch of Wen's ships are threatening the Discovery, and Wen demands their dilithium. Captain Ndoye denies Saru access to Earth because of the trouble he's caused by attracting Wen. She tries to transport off of the ship, but their transporters aren't working. Tilly and Stamets discover that Adira put something into the engineering controls to block the Defense Force's transporters. They get suspicious of how Adira knows how a 900-year-old ship works. Awoshikun notices that Booker and Burnham took off with their dilithium. Ndoye orders her ships to target Book's ship to keep Wen from getting their dilithium. Burnham offers to give Wen the dilithium in exchange for leaving the system. The Defense Forces fire on Discovery, and Wen agrees to leave in exchange for the dilithium. Michael takes Wen hostage, beams onto the Discovery, and demands that Wen and Captain Ndoye negotiate. Wen accuses Earth of hoarding dilithium. Giorgio takes off his fake alien head and reveals that he's actually a human in disguise all along. Adira is snooping around the Jeffries tubes and is discovered by Stamets. Adira asks Stamets to explain the spore drive or they'll report him, but Stamets knows that Adira is the one who sabotaged the transporters, so he threatens to report that. Despite this leverage, Stamets explains the spore drive anyway. He also gives away that they're from 2258. Adira divulges that they joined the Defense Forces in the hope of finding a Federation starship, and they sabotaged the transporters so they could further investigate the Discovery. They also reveal that they know Senatal. Wen reveals that he is actually from a colony on Titan that is struggling to survive, and that's why they have been raiding dilithium. Captain Ndoye agrees to negotiate helping them out, and that solves the problem. This is a very classic Star Trek kind of thing. They solve their problems by finally negotiating. Captain Ndoye also agrees to let Adira stay on the ship to help out the crew. Adira also explains that they essentially are Senatal because despite being human, they carry a Trill symbiote, specifically the Tall symbiote. Since they're human, they can't